just to acknowledge really quick, this event is the product of collaboration between several different organizations led by Neighborhood Engagement Hub, Crim Fitness Foundation, and the Flint Neighborhoods United, with support from the Imagine Flint Neighborhood Planning Initiative, Ruth Mott Foundation, and Community Foundation of Greater Flint. This is the 4th year of the workshop series, and we have been growing and growing ever since the start. Thank you all for joining us. So a couple things to note here. Teresa Roach from the Crim Foundation is going to be managing our Zoom.
Hello.
So yes, hi Karma, thank you. I'm going to be managing the poll everywhere questions. We'll get to that in just a second. If you have any technical difficulties, call or text Michelle at the number listed here. Sierra actually took off. So if you do have any tech issues, call Michelle at 810-964-3150. And again, if you need to get the meeting material packets, you can contact Ashley or come by the Neighborhood Engagement Hub tomorrow between 5 and 7, or drop me a line and I will come and deliver those to you if you aren't able to make it for the pickup tomorrow. So Ashley, are you good to go?
I am good to go, but unfortunately, awesome. We still have this locked phone issue, so we're gonna make it work.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you, Michael, for taking over for me. I really appreciate it. As always, we're just gonna do a quick check-in on our workshop participation agreement. So, as I had said in our last iteration, it's really easy being on Zoom and getting distracted by other things. I do it all the time in meetings. Truth, being honest and authentic here about my own self. I often find myself checking emails or, sending texts to people to follow up on tasks while I'm in other meetings. But today, let's just agree to be together and to be as mentally and physically present as we possibly can, given that we are at home. Contribute to the meeting goals, share ideas, ask questions, contribute to the discussion. Please be respectful of those in the room. And remember, if you have questions or concerns about the material, please either hold them until the end of the presentation, so write them down, or you can pop them in the chat. We just want to be thoughtful about everybody's time, and we know that this presentation is kind of lengthy in and of itself. So we want to make sure that we get through it. Also, remember to build on the ideas of others and try to offer solutions or ideas whenever possible. Oh, I don't think it's working for me, Michael.
And just to jump in from the technology side, if you weren't here before, we are recording. So if you don't want to be recorded, feel free to turn off your camera.
Yeah, Michael, it stopped working. So Michael provided me with this really fancy remote, but it's not working, so I can't advance the slides myself. So you get to hear me tell Michael every 5 seconds to advance the slide for me. Nice try, Michael.
Michael, I'm gonna send you a message about another option.
Okay, cool. In the meantime, we'll be just fine. We'll make it work. All right, so for today, we're going to be talking about SMART goals and action planning. And I see a lot of familiar faces in our Zoom room. So I know that a lot of folks have gotten this presentation in one form or another over the years. So I'm going to kind of keep an even pace. But if you need me to slow down or go over anything again, please feel free to just pop it in the chat, and then Michael and Teresa will flag me to slow down. Today we're going to focus on defining a project, talk about what SMART goals are and how to create a SMART goal, and then doing action planning and how to pivot when the unexpected happens. But before we do that, Michael's going to give us the intro to Poll Everywhere again, because we do have some more Poll Everywhere questions as a part of this presentation.
All right, so if you have already heard this spiel, feel free to check out. If you have not, just real quick, we are going to be asking some questions throughout this presentation. So it is going to be some interactive questions and everything. So you are going to use either your phone, tablet, or computer to respond. For example, if you have Zoom open on your computer, you might find it easier to use your phone to respond, either by going to a website or by texting a phone number, and we'll give you that information in just a second. I do want to point out here, everything that you respond with is completely confidential, or excuse me, anonymous. We are not recording any phone numbers, any names, any emails, anything identifiable. So feel free to speak your mind. Real quick, if you are using a web browser, go to the URL pollev.com/COF community. Teresa or Karma, if you could drop that link in the chat box. Or if you are going to be using your text messages, then go ahead and text the number 22333, excuse me, text the word COF community to the number 22333. And again, those that link and that phone number is in the chat box right now. So we're just going to do a quick sample here. We already got some responses earlier, but what is something that has brought you joy today? If you have not used if you've not used this yet, then please feel free to drop those in. And let's actually see, let's see a word cloud. What are people talking about? People are talking about delicious things. They're talking about community and connecting. Cats, snow, winter, seeing. Awesome. All right, if anybody is having any issues with the poll everywhere, please feel free to drop me a line in the chat box or raise your hand right now or unmute yourself and let us know that you're having issues. Otherwise, Ashley, I think that we are probably good to go.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Beautiful.
Oh, Raynetta's hand is raised. Raynetta,
Oh.
did you have something you wanted to share?
No, that was an accident, but thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. All right. So just like we did last time, we're going to do some pre and post questions. As Michael had mentioned, this kind of gives us an idea of where you are so we can tailor our conversation and spend more time on the things that folks know a little bit less about. And it also lets us know how we did in our presentation. So how much did we know when we first started and how much did we know at the end? So first, we're going to start off by saying, I know how to write a SMART goal. Select A for definitely yes, all the way through E for definitely not. It looks like the results are already rolling in.
So again, if you're using your text messages, text the letter A for definitely yes, B for mostly, C for not sure, D for mostly not, and E for definitely not. And let's go ahead and see.
Okay, so we've got quite a few folks that feel pretty comfortable writing a SMART goal, but some others that are not so sure. We will definitely get through that today. So we will make sure that when you leave here, you are definitely yes, and you can wear the cool guy sunglasses. One anecdotal funny story while we switch to our next poll everywhere question. When we were doing a dry run of this, I did try to use the emoticon to respond to a pre-post question and it did not work. All right, Michael, can we advance to the next slide? Awesome, thank you. So the next question that we're going to be answering is, I know how to develop an action plan for achieving my neighborhood's project goal. Select A for definitely yes, B for mostly yes, C for not sure, D for mostly not, and E for definitely not. Okay, it looks like folks are a little less sure on how to develop an action plan. Still have quite a few folks that feel like they're pretty familiar with it, but we're a little bit more spread out than we were with SMART goals. So what I will do is I will talk about SMART goals, but I'll spend more time focusing on the structure of an action plan and how to develop an action plan. All right, Michael. All right, so the first step to creating an action plan and starting to set out your goals is defining a project. A lot of times when I work with groups, or even when I'm addressing an issue myself, I see the problem, but I don't always see a solution. Creating opportunities to define a project gives you a chance to act on something rather than seeing a problem. So there are a couple of different things that we use when we're working with neighborhood groups, we being the Neighborhood Engagement Hub. So the first thing that I typically use when I'm working with groups to define a project is an exercise called hopes, fears, and expectations. What are your hopes for the neighborhood? What are your fears for the neighborhood? And what are your expectations of your neighborhood group or the folks that are gathered together to address an issue? It's kind of similar to a SWOT analysis, which is what a lot of folks are familiar with from school: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Hopes, fears, and expectations helps kind of structure things around your neighborhood. One of the other things that I find really important about that exercise is setting expectations for your group. Oftentimes, if we're not clear about our expectations up front, we get kind of confused along the way. So I know, for example, if Teresa and I are working on a project together and I think that we're going to go after a grant, we're going to create a massive workshop program, we're going to talk to 40 different neighborhood groups and resident leaders about neighborhood work. That's very different in the size and scope than sending out a communication or a newsletter just about one specific event or project. So if Teresa and I were not on the same page and we didn't have the same expectations for our project, then we're already at a disadvantage. So how to turn issues into projects. Again, turning concerns and issues that you have in your neighborhood or things that you're working on into projects is an important exercise because it creates opportunities for you to act. It allows neighbors to think about their interest in project activities and creates opportunities for doing and not just talking. So a couple of examples that we have. So for example, vacant lots and neighborhood blight. It's an issue in a lot of neighborhoods throughout the city of Flint. A project could be coordinating a cleanup and/or some vacant lot maintenance for specific areas of the neighborhood in order to address that blight. Another example that is, Michael, if you could go back. Another example that I think is really pertinent to what's going on right now is folks are feeling really isolated as a result of the pandemic. They're feeling disconnected. It's been a very difficult year. So one project that you may consider, depending on where COVID numbers trend over the course of the next few months, is hosting a socially distanced community event to allow neighborhoods to connect with one another. So tools for project planning. SMART goals is just a way to formulate a goal. It's a silly acronym that helps ensure that your goal is something that could be easily met. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time specific. The important part of creating a SMART goal is not necessarily that you know the acronym or that you're hitting all of the things, although it's good for you to do that. It's more about ensuring that your goal is something that you can actually check off at the end of the year. Sometimes we get really lofty in our goals and our objective, let's just say, maybe my objective for the Neighborhood Engagement Hub is to raise $1 million. Well, actually, that is specific. Maybe it's to eliminate all of the blight. But that takes a long time. So how can we make it specific, measurable, actionable, and time bound so that I can hit targets along that goal line? Got a couple of examples. So So clean up vacant properties. Is it smart? Select A for yes on your poll everywhere, or B for no. No. Very good, everyone. It is not specific, measurable, or time bound. Gives us a little bit of information about what it is that our goal is, but it doesn't identify a location or when we're going to do it. So let's go to our next one. Coordinate 2 community cleanups as a part of this DSMA NEH dumpster project at Fleming and Pasadena. Is it smart? Is it specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound? Yes is A, or B is no. Wonderful. 79% of folks said yes. Yes, it is a SMART goal. It is specific. So we're coordinating 2 community cleanups as a part of this project. We have a specific location that we've identified. It is not time bound though, so that would have made it a better goal if I said that I wanted to complete that in 2021. So if the folks that said no because it wasn't time bound, way to catch me on that one. Hold an event in the neighborhood. Yes is A, B is no. Is it smart? Hold an event in the neighborhood. No. So same thing. It's not specific. What kind of event? Is it a distribution event? Are we giving out food? Is it a musical event? Is it an art event? Is it a cleanup event? What neighborhood? What is the location? Hold a Porch Fest event on the 100 block of McClellan Street in June 2021. Is it smart? A for yes, B for no. Wonderful. 93% said yes. Yes, it is smart because we're talking about a specific timeline, specific kind of event, and a specific location. It's also measurable and relevant. And it's achievable. Again, so some tools to prioritize your projects. Projects need to align with the goals and issues and assets identified by your group. They need to be important to a large number of people in your neighborhood organization because it helps to ensure that there are more people to support parts of the project if somebody gets tied up with a personal issue or you need some support. Maybe something that you expected to be relatively simple is taking more time or energy than you had originally anticipated, and you need a larger group of folks so that you have people to lean on. How to evaluate a project. So this is an opportunity. These are some things that you might want to think about when you're considering how you prioritize your projects. How much time is it going to take to complete the project? How much does it cost? If it takes a little bit of time to organize a event or a project that you are trying to work on, and the cost is relatively minimal, that might be a good project to tackle first to get interest in your neighborhood organization and the things that you do. What kind of impact will it have in the neighborhood? Where does the buck stop? So who ultimately has control over the critical pieces of the project? While it is important to take on big challenges that may have bigger players involved, it's important to keep people engaged by continuing to do things while you're working towards that bigger goal. So make some time, like I said, make some time for simple projects or activities. Start a community cleanup or a series of community cleanups that can help generate momentum and help the group grow while you're working on larger projects. So if you want to, take over multiple vacant parcels in your neighborhood and transition them into a community garden, over time, take on some simpler projects that people can be engaged in, because sometimes it's difficult for people to see the vision when it takes a while to get to that ultimate goal. So continue to keep people engaged through community cleanups, maybe Zoom dinners, neighborhood surveys, kind of do property assessments. Those are just a couple of examples. All right. When we're doing action planning, we want to set SMART goals for getting the project done. And we want to create a timeline and chart of roles and responsibilities so that we understand all of the activities that are associated with a particular goal, and the people who are going to be making the thing happen. Some other things that you want to consider is creating a rough budget, especially if you're going to be looking at potentially getting grant dollars or asking for funds from community members to support your project. So thinking a little bit about the volunteer time that would be required, materials and other sorts of costs that would be associated with your project. You might also want to spend some time considering what barriers or issues you may experience in completing your project in advance so that you can think a little bit about how you will pivot as those challenges arise. So if you're making plans for projects that your neighborhood group will be doing this upcoming year in 2021, consider what you might do if case numbers start to go up and we need to be more thoughtful about social distancing. So, can your event continue to go on if case numbers of COVID go up and we need to kind of pivot? Can we think of ways to socially distance or get access to protective equipment to make sure that we keep everybody safe? So thinking about those issues before they arise will make sure that you can be more nimble if there is something that you do need to address down the line. It's important to document everything that you're doing. Sometimes it feels a little bit cumbersome, but documenting a project plan and sharing it with everybody involved, again, make sure that everybody is clear on the expectations associated with the work that you're doing. So it ensures that if there are particular roles and responsibilities that folks have, that they're clear on what's being asked of them and what the timeline is for those activities. It can also lead to funding and leverage support. Funders often like to see that neighborhood groups or even organizations and institutions have really thought through their projects and all of the different elements along the way, and that they've documented the different steps associated with making their goals a reality. Communication strategies. These are things that you all are very familiar with, using emails, phone trees, door-to-door, which might be something that you may or may not feel comfortable with at this point. File sharing systems are another good way to share information among your neighborhood if that's something that you're comfortable with. And then social media applications like Facebook and Nextdoor. Teresa will be doing a segment on social media on Wednesday at 6 p.m. So here, and you have this in your packet, this is just kind of an outline of results of a fake hopes, fears, and expectations exercise and an action plan. This is included in the packet, and you also have the actual action planning template as well as a goals worksheet and a hopes, fears, and expectations worksheet. So you've got some resources in your packet that you can use to kind of implement some of these concepts that we talked about. So if we could just kind of move through these relatively quickly. So this is what your action plan goal might look like. So the goal is to hold a Porch Fest event on the 100 and 200 block of McClellan Street in June 2021. Your action might be to complete the Porch Fest partnership agreement, to meet with the neighborhood engagement hub and What's Up Downtown to talk about what that plan might look like, to identify some porches where you might have musicians and artists perform, create a strategy around social distancing, send thank you cards to folks that participate. And if you're looking to have that event take place in June, then you might want to start planning in March and April so that you've got plenty of time to put the pieces together and you're not rushing at the last minute. when you are thinking about these projects and the activities that you're looking to do, it's important to identify the specific folks that are going to be responsible for making the activities happen. The leader is just the person who is ultimately responsible for making sure that that activity or goal is achieved. That doesn't necessarily mean that the leader does everything. They have people who are there to support them and to advise them throughout the course of the action items associated with the goal, but the leader is the one that might be contacting folks that acted as a support system or had indicated that they would be willing to support an activity to say, hey, just wanted to check in and make sure that you called that vendor, or did you get a hold of the musician? Do we have volunteers lined up? So the leader is the person who's ultimately responsible for making sure that things continue to move forward. And this is just another example of a way that you could line out your roles and responsibilities. So identifying specific leaders for each of your goals, supports, and folks that might advise you. So people that have specific technical expertise on a project. If you're working with if you're planning a vacant lot reuse project, you might want to reach out to folks in the horticulture department at Applewood, because they do provide technical assistance to neighborhood groups and can help you kind of come up with a plan for what you want to do on a vacant lot. So there are lots of different resources, just like we had discussed in our last session, that you can use in order to support your project. So as Michael mentioned before, there are a couple of different organizations that provide support for action planning. This is a core function of what the Neighborhood Engagement Hub does. We work with several neighborhood groups throughout the city of Flint to develop these action plans that specifically identify SMART goals, timelines, and role charts for various activities that neighborhood groups do. Our action plans are typically focused on a 1-year time period. So they're really about kind of getting into the weeds on very specific activities. So, calling so-and-so at the city about this thing, very, very specific, tangible, checkable sorts of activities that can be done to help realize your goal. The city of Flint also has a neighborhood planning initiative. And if you have questions about that, I'm sure that Michael would be happy to address them. The Neighborhood Planning Initiative is a function of the Imagine Flint Master Plan, where they develop longer-term strategies for neighborhoods throughout the city of Flint. Those are typically, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, typically 3 to 5 year plans that devise more robust strategies for a longer-term vision for the neighborhood. Oftentimes, the Neighborhood Engagement Hub has worked in partnership with the city of Flint through that process, and then kind of following on that process to support neighborhood groups in thinking through 1-year action strategies that a neighborhood group can use in order to meet the objectives of projects that were identified through that larger planning process.
I do want to point out just really quick, we are geographically focused. So if you are in a neighborhood that is north of Flushing, 5th, and Robert T., please feel free to reach out and I can share some more information about that.
Great, thank you, Michael. All right, so now we're going to spend some time, you don't have to listen to me talk anymore. Now we're gonna do a couple of breakout sessions and we'll talk about SMART goals and action items that we can work on for that SMART goal as an exercise to kind of get familiar with action planning and how you can go about using the action planning template that is in your materials for this session. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that before we then come back as a group and do our post questions and then wrap up for the night. So we had originally planned each of these presentations to take about 45 minutes. So what I would like to recommend that we do, if everybody's comfortable with it, is I would like for Michael to pull up the slides so that we can see our post questions while we're having some discussion about our breakout rooms, just so that we're being thoughtful of everybody's time and we're not keeping you too long. So Michael's just going to he's going to pull the post questions up on the slide. We're going to give you some time to do the first one and then we'll go to the next one. But while we're doing that, we'll start to have some conversation about our breakout rooms. So for those on the phone, the question is, I know how to write a SMART goal, A being definitely yes, B being mostly yes, C being not sure, D being mostly not, E being definitely not. And while folks are responding to that question, which breakout group would like to talk about what they discussed?
So this is Trifina group, and because I didn't get a chance to ask in my group, Megan, Etna, or Holly, would one of you like to share out what we discussed in the group? If not, I can take it.
And you will have to unmute yourself if you do want to speak. Just remember to do that. I can't see everybody right now, so.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and go. Our group decided to focus on the goals. And so we wanted to really get to eventually how to identify strategies to clean up blight. But there was an issue in our neighborhood of people coming out to help or get involved. And so we really focused on a SMART goal that would help us to get out and invite people into the discussion to identify strategies. We had already tried to pass out flyers, over 400 flyers in our neighborhood, as well as knocking on doors. It didn't seem to work. And so we started to craft a goal where it was having the individuals that were already involved to invite one person out to the meeting that was going to be held on a particular day, so that we can have a discussion on strategies to clean up blight in our neighborhood and identify a day for a clean.
See, I started talking and I was on mute. Thank you, Trifina.
And we didn't get to action, but we were still working on that goal to make sure that it was specific or SMART.
Great. So before we dig into another one, we'll get to our next post question. So I know how to develop an action plan for achieving my neighborhood's project goals. A being definitely yes, B mostly yes, C not sure, D mostly not, and E definitely not. Stephanie, do you want to talk a little bit about the goal that we discussed? Stephanie, you're on mute.
All right, once again, I'm Stephanie Shaw, representing Vision for My Life. We talked about in our group that come up with the ideal that we have for 2 years that we have done in the Genesee County area called the Junior Doctors Program. And we came up with a smart way of how to actually get students to engage more into the program, about kind of getting more of the students enrolled into the program by dealing with the school system, kind of getting flyers out to the different schools. Also, we can do word of mouth, just people that we know, kids involved. Also, television interviews also is another way to get kids involved as well. So those are just some of the few things that we talked about, getting kids involved into the community, into the program, where we are raising up, actually exposing our youth to more of becoming doctors, giving them the opportunity and the information of becoming doctors, and let them realize how valuable and knowledgeable and maybe the potential of becoming a doctor in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Michael, do we have results for this question? Awesome. So we really kicked it out of the park to make sure that we expanded our knowledge on how to develop an action plan. So that's really fantastic. This is a lot further from where we were when we started. So that's very exciting. All right. Michael or Karma's group want to talk about what you discussed in your breakout?
I'm going to throw it over to Dominique. Dominique, would you like to do a report out?
Sure.
All
right. So we spoke about an Easter egg hunt that the Brennan Park and a resident is going to try to move forward with this year. It's going to be for 2 hours from 2 to 5. The requirements that you must have a mask, a face mask. If you don't have one, of course, one will be provided for you. And also there will be gloves provided for each age group. So there will be 4 age groups. Each group will have 15 minutes. Each group it will be 5 at a time for each group. So we will be having we'll be there a little bit all day. Definitely. There will be a designated area for each group to do their Easter egg hunt. For instance, age group 2 to 4 will be 5 at a time, and they will have a designated area that's probably have red cones because we have color coded cones available. So they will be in the red section, 5 at a time. And the Brennan Park is pretty spacious, so we will be able to use that space to space out our 4 groups that's running 5 at a time. And after each group is done, they will be asked to leave the Easter egg hunt. They can either go sit in a car and watch the other kids participate, but they will be asked to leave the Easter egg hunt to ensure safety of socializing, because unfortunately we can't do that like we normally would do. So that's what we're going to do over at the Brennan Park for the with USMO in the Lees Easter Egg Hunt 2021. Did I need to speak about the whole fears and expectation, or?
No, I think that's great for now. That sounds like a really awesome event.
Okay.
Awesome. Michael, does your group want to share out? And then we can get
Yeah. Let's I'll throw it over to Heather, who is going to talk about the clubhouse at Mott Park.
Thank you. One of the things that we would like to do is use our sorry about my pug barking. We would like to use our clubhouse for community enrichment, for classes, for social gatherings, for all sorts of things, but we need a new roof. So working through some of the grants, funding, some of the senior members I'm new, they were able to give some steps on coordinating volunteers, and we have to put a timeline, we have to get a budget. So we talked about all of the steps that would take, because that's kind of a big goal to get done for the neighborhood. So we have, some members on the call tonight that are very active in procuring some of these resources for the association so that we can do this for all of the neighbors to enjoy and utilize. So we're working towards that.
Thank you, Heather. And I want to throw it over to Eartha. You had some really great insights on sort of the evaluation. How do you, make sure that you're able to report back about the outcomes of your project?
Doing a before and after survey in the area, because Frog, we done lights. And what we done, we surveyed the areas to find out which were the darkest areas in our community. We got permission from the residents first before installing. After the lights were installed, we also got a form from them that nobody was injured on their property, that they had cared for the lights and how pleased they were, and how would they like to join our group. And we actually had 14 residents that said that they would join our Frog organization. But we made sure we got the cost factor in of the lights, and the before and after we had the pictures to show, and we were actually able to fulfill our grant obligations with Habitat. Also, we done the same things for sidewalks in both Manley Village and Lakewood.
Thank you, Eartha. I just wanted to, I thought that was really important to share, because that really speaks to the measurable aspect of the SMART goal. And that is a huge factor when you're applying to grants, making sure that you are able to report on the measurable outcomes of those. So thank you for sharing that, Eartha.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Eartha. Thank you, Heather.
You're
Sounds like
welcome.
everybody had some really great conversation in their breakout groups. Awesome. So unless anybody has any questions or anything else that they'd like to discuss tonight, I'm going to go ahead and have Michael set up the Poll Everywhere kind of final 3 questions for this evening to just kind of give us some feedback on how we did so far. Does anybody
Yep, so
have
this, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so this is a little bit different. You are gonna have to respond to these questions on a web browser. So just go to the URL pollev.com/CUF-community. We can share that in the chat as well. And this is gonna be open for the next couple days. So yeah, feel free to give us your responses.